Welcome to our second webinar. We will have a conversation with Healthtech innovators. I am Margarida Costa. I'm from Fabricate Startups, and on behalf of Protechting, we are very happy to have you all here today. Just let you know that this webinar is being recorded, so we will share it afterwards. And before we dive into our conversation, let me just introduce you Protechting. Protechting is an open innovation program dedicated to accelerating startups in the health tech, insurtech, and tech enabler sectors. So this program empowers innovative solutions through pilot funding, network opportunities, and expert mentorship to shape the future of healthcare and insurance industries. The selected startups will have the opportunity to do a sponsored pilot and be present at Web Summit, which includes having a dedicated booth. The applications are open at protechting.com. So if you didn't apply yet, don't miss out this opportunity, and you can submit your application. We want to make this session as interactive as possible, so feel free to leave your questions about the program in the chat box. If we don't have enough time to address them during the webinar, as it's just half an hour, don't worry, we will respond to your questions afterward. So stay engaged and please participate actively. Now, let me introduce you our moderator and guests. Leading our panel today is Francisca Leite, the Executive Director of Hospital da Luz Learning Health. Joining us are three health tech innovators, each one transforming the healthcare landscape in their own ways. So first, we have Francisca Canais, the co-founder and CEO of Nevaro. We have Bibiana Moura, the head of partnerships at Virtuleap, and José Bastos, the co-founder and CEO of Knok. We encourage you to engage with our panelists in the chat, share your thoughts, and let us know your questions. Thank you all for joining us today. If you didn't apply yet, again, please visit our site, protechting.com, and hope to see you soon. Let's begin our journey through the world of health tech. Over to you, Francisca.
Thank you, Margarida. It's a pleasure to be here, even though it's a beach day today. But anyway, I'm glad to see so many participants. And so let's start this conversation with these three guests that I've known, some of them for a while. And we'll start with Francisca. She's also a former Protechting winner, and she'll tell us a little bit about that in the end if we have the time. So now, Francisca, my first question to you is, in what ways Nevaro has empowered individuals to take charge of their health and well-being?
Okay, so hi everyone. Also, it's a pleasure also to be here with also some colleagues that I know already before. So to answer to your question, Francisca, I will first introduce you a little bit about what we do at Nevaro. So we work in the mental health field, namely we are working in the prevention setting. So we are working towards providing a self-care management tool so that we can bridge the gap that is currently going on in the mental health care pathway. So this is, of course, a field that is very complex, and still there is a long way to progress in terms of technology to the sector. So what we started doing was quantifying, so giving metrics to quantify the progress and the journey of the users, the patients. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So we started using wearables, for example, wristbands, also headbands, to quantify the anxiety response of patients or users to certain stimuli. So it was a kind of emotional classification technology. And we did that first in a clinical setting. So nowadays we are more focused in a universal and preventive scenario. But our main technology is biofeedback. So this personalization and quantification using the physiological response that we have. So to also go a little bit towards your question, Francisca, I think that we are revolutionizing the mental health care scenario by giving this quantification to the sector. Yeah.
And you have evolved. So since you started, and I've met you a few years back, and you were different in the beginning, and you have been involved in changing and adapting a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey as well,
Yeah,
to reach where you are now?
Yeah, we went through several learning paths, and we did several changes in our journey. So when we met back in Protechting program, we did a pilot with you, with Hospital da Luz, in which we were, so our main solution was this quantification for mental health, but we were very flexible in hearing what were the needs that the partners of the program had. So with Hospital da Luz, we identified that there was a need to quantify certain medical training procedures. And so we pivoted our solution to this setting. So we did this proof of concept in the simulation center of Hospital da Luz, in which we applied this quantification to medical training. So our goal was to assess what were clinicians feeling during the medical training, because this, of course, is important to their performance in a real scenario. Yeah.
Thank you, Francisca.
Thanks.
So now, José, so you also have evolved with time, and you've also changed. When I first heard about you, you were doing something that was, I think, very different from what you're doing now, even though it makes sense, the path that you've had since I don't know, 2016 or something like that, probably.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how has your platform leveraged technology to enhance healthcare accessibility and bridge the gap between patients and healthcare professionals, which has always been the goal, right? But
yes,
but in different ways. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The goal and the vision has never changed. Our claim is Knok your healthcare everywhere, but the path to achieve the vision has changed dramatically. So when we started, what we did was we had an app where you could just call one of our doctors. So it was a little bit like a Uber experience. And today, that represents less than 2% of our revenues. And basically, what we have evolved is we did evolve our technology so that we can provide healthcare to as many people as possible by working together, be that with insurers who use our services to deliver primary care, health, and some specialties like mental health, nutrition, pediatrics to their clients. And at the same time, we started licensing our technology to hospitals who can use our technology to deliver their own healthcare in telemedicine. But the other, and that was kind of the technological change. The other evolution where technology has changed so much since we started is kind of when we started, the real achievement was to put the doctor and the patient speaking to each other on a chat like this, which back then was quite unusual. And today, we understood at some point that to make telemedicine effective, we needed to gather a real significant amount of data points in the whole patient journey. We needed to direct the patient to the right point of care across this patient journey. And today, we gather around 150 data points in every journey that the patient takes. We manage chronic patients because we have specific patient journeys aimed at mental health or at diabetes patients, and we're now starting to work on cardiovascular disease patients and also pregnant women. Basically, always keeping the same vision, which is the way you use your technology to gap the bridge between patients and practitioners, is to make the experience the simplest possible, but where we can gather as much as we can in order to help the practitioner deliver the best quality of service and get the most insights about the patient earlier in the process. So I think, yeah, the vision was there. It's the technology that has evolved. And I mean, when again, you go back to 2016 and getting two people to speak in a video was amazing. Today, we can read vital signs across the video stream, and we can gather immediate patient data through video stream, or we can use AI to direct the patient to the right point of care. Or right now, we're working in, for example, looking at the whole clinical history of the patient that we have on our EHR and deliver the doctor the summary of the whole patient history immediately instead of the doctor having to go back in time for that. So yeah, this is how we are leveraging technology to improve accessibility, because the more efficient we make the doctors, the more accessible healthcare is, because doctors are able to see more patients, or if they spend less time, consultations will have a lower price, and one way or the other, we make it more accessible and more affordable.
Very needed, as we all know.
Yeah.
I'll have a couple of questions to ask you later, but now to Bibiana. And so Bibiana is here to tell us about Virtuleap. And so I would also ask her to tell us a little bit about what your startup does, and in particular, if you can share examples of your cutting-edge personalized medicine solutions and how they have positively impacted patient outcomes.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here today, and thank you for your question, Francisca. So at Virtuleap, we're basically working in the intersection between virtual reality and neuroscience. The idea is to come up with solutions, immersive solutions that basically can help treat or diagnose cognitive disorders. When we're talking about cognitive disorders, we can hide from age-related cognitive decline, dementias, but there are also other areas and other diseases and conditions in which cognition is affected. We're talking here about ADHD, we're talking about autism, we're talking about traumatic brain injury, we're talking about even long COVID. So the application of these solutions in the cognitive disorders is quite wide, let's call it like that. So our flagship program is called Enhance VR, and currently it consists of 15 gamified exercises in virtual reality. I call it mini games because in fact they are gamified versions of neuropsychological validated tools, and they basically provide cognitive workout across 7 different cognitive abilities. And the idea for these games is to use them as digital therapeutics for the different areas that I mentioned. We are now working on a second product, which is more to do with the huge need that exists nowadays in the dementia field, which is the early diagnosis. So nowadays what happens is that when people actually are diagnosed, it's too late and there is very little that can be done. The tools that are at disposal of the medical doctors, of the healthcare professionals, basically lack the sensitivity to be able to detect very early on the cognitive decline onsets. And that's where we think that virtual reality will actually help, because we're talking about better data, better quality of data, because we're talking about an ecological valid scenario that enables realistic interactions. But we're also talking about much more data that can be collected, which means that this paves the way for the discovery of digital biomarkers. So we're creating now a new cognitive screening tool, which is called CogniClear VR. Nowadays, it's a prototype stage, and basically we are testing it and co-creating it together with end users. And hopefully we'll be launching it next year. Regarding the impact that our solutions already have, and going back to the Enhance and the cognitive training, that app was launched in 2019. We have 57,000 registered users using it. And in terms of results, we've published this year our first paper in which we've shown that after 10 training sessions, we were able to actually improve the processing speed of adults, university adults with ADHD. So we were able to actually get a significant improvement in their processing speed, the first evidence that maybe our games can be used as digital therapeutics. I think this is, in a nutshell, this is basically what we're up to.
Thank you very much. I'll also just like to ask the participants that they can also leave questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to have these questions asked to the panelists as well. But so all of you basically talking about, of course, technology. That's something that you all have in common. But also I've heard a lot about data points and quantification, and we all know that health is more digital and will become more digital as we progress. So I'm interested to know from all of you, how do you think this will evolve, and how do you envision this future of medicine very based on technology and very based on data? And what do you expect this will help with for sure in terms of, and you, Viviane, also mentioned this, early diagnostics, accessibility and all that. But so I'd like to hear a little bit about what you think, what the future will bring us, and how you think you will also contribute to this future. Moving on. So maybe now we'll start with José, and then Francisco, and then Viviane and Francisca, just to be fair.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think there are two realities that are absolutely facts, which is the fact that we will have less healthcare providers as we go forward, and at the same time, that the consumption of healthcare is increasing as we go forward. So we need to make the healthcare professionals' time much more efficient, or else we will have a problem. I think on top of this, and that's a point I didn't mention before, for hospitals, for instance, there is the issue with patient engagement and patient loyalty, which is patients do not comply with what they should, and then they have more acute episodes than you would want, and then they go to your emergencies and to your unplanned appointments rather than going to the potentially programmed interactions and engagements. And the way we are, for instance, positioning ourselves is we have evolved from the pure telemedicine, as I was explaining, to something which is much more an interactive and a patient engagement tool inside our own platform, where we can manage patients over time. Because by managing patients over time, what we achieve is there is a number of data points that we are gathering over days, weeks, months that help. It's not prospective healthcare, but it helps preventing a little bit, in the sense that as you gather non-normal data, you get alarms. And by doing that, you of course avoid the most critical and the most painful points for the whole healthcare system that consume many more resources, which are the acute episodes. So this is how we see it. We need to have incredible patient engagement. When we have very good patient engagement, we need to be able to gather that data and to act upon that data to avoid the maximum excess utilization of healthcare by basically monitoring the patient, not in the patient monitoring classic scheme, but kind of monitoring functional people who are autonomous and who have low commitment chronic diseases and even low commitment non-chronic diseases, just need to be aware of their healthcare. And ultimately, I think that's how data is going to enhance what we do and the quality of healthcare in general. So that's kind of how I see it.
Great, thank you. What about you, Viviane?
Well, when talking about data, I think that data-driven strategies will have the potential to improve the delivery of healthcare. We're talking here about improving health outcomes. We're talking here about increasing efficiency and eventually also cutting down costs. So having like the data at the center of the decisions will for sure improve a lot the way we see healthcare nowadays. And there is a layer which has to do with the data that can be collected remotely at patients' homes. In our case, that we have our solution in NSVR, we are collecting 200,000 data points every 3 minutes. And we're talking about a lot of behavioral data that can be further exploited, right? But importantly, I think that data will change patient journeys, you know? For example, taking into account the dementia patients. If you have solutions that can be working at the prevention side and basically collecting a lot of data, this data can be used to monitor basically their cognitive decline. Then they basically, there's some sign that is being projected into the hospital, or the person that is in charge of the care of this person basically drives them to the hospital in order to do some kind of exam. For example, CogniClear, which is the cognitive screening tool that I was talking about. A tool that can be done without the presence of a medical doctor in order to actually like release them to be working on something else. Then people go home and basically they start having another monitoring, like digital monitoring, to see if the intervention that is being applied is actually working. Is it working? Fine. If it's not working, the data will tell you, and basically this person comes back to the hospital. So if we have this data-driven approach, I think that overall we will improve the healthcare and for better health outcomes, for sure.
Great, thank you. Francisca?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I agree with both Jose and Viviana's opinions, and taking a little bit from there, our vision is also a value-based healthcare approach about healthcare. So we believe that the data and quantification can really be leveraged the healthcare payment. So we believe that the healthcare should be reimbursed or paid based on the outcomes and not based on the quantity or frequency of the appointments, because we are seeing that patients, of course, disengage with the therapies if they see that they don't have an outcome, right? So we believe in this approach. And what we are doing is, as I explained, quantifying the mental health outcomes and giving that to the user right now. And we also see that the future needs to have a more preventive approach. For example, in mental health, there is an average delay of 11 years between the moment that someone starts to have symptoms of anxiety or depression and the moment where they seek professional help. So the current healthcare paradigm is very advanced. So we need an early stage shift to this pathway, we believe.
Okay. So there's a question from one of the participants I think is, quite interesting that I would like to also to open to you, and it has to do with emerging trends in health tech that startups should be aware for future growth. I think we also already talked a little bit about some of these, like prevention for sure, also in terms of giving the tools to the patient or to the person that is not healthy before being a patient, so really putting the individual in the center. I don't know if any of you would like to talk a little bit about these as well. Yeah. So any emerging trends that you think you should be aware for future growth?
I think that putting the user at the center of this discussion is key, actually, to develop better solutions and solutions that they actually need. That's something that we need to do, especially when we're talking about specific populations with very specific needs. And what I think can work for them, if you don't go there and test, many times you're going to be wrong. This is our experience. There is also something else that you need to take in account, which is digital literacy. When we're talking about digital solutions, this is really important. Obviously, maybe in a couple of years, this won't be an issue but we have to care about the people of today, right? Which means that we have to actually come up with solutions that are accessible to everyone, and make sure that they can be spread throughout all people, and that there are no barriers to adoption. But I think that co-creating the solutions is definitely key, to make sure that the solutions are going to be well adjusted to this population. Obviously, you also need to take in care that into account that sometimes the end user is one, but the person that is going to be prescribing is another, which means that there's another layer there that you need to take in account and make sure to involve them very early on to make sure that this is a solution that actually they think is useful as well. I think that those are two very important aspects.
And very likely the person who pays is a different one or a different entity. So, you know, the aligning all of these interests and all of these pressures, as also Francisca was mentioning, in terms of also paying basic, maybe by outcomes instead of just by volume, and all of these that we know has been a trend, but not very well realized so far, unfortunately. A few questions also about more of the difficulty side. So the sensitive data, privacy, security, interoperability. I don't know, Jose, I think this is probably a question for you, like
yes,
how, and
yes.
also licensing to public hospitals, like, can you tell us a little bit about what has been?
So, yeah, absolutely. For clarification, we deal with a lot of sensitive data. We have ISO 27001 certification precisely because of that. And I think that for me is one of the key things that I usually don't see very clear in healthcare, and you mix up kind of amateur players with professional players because everybody's doing data and very few get kind of the proper certifications to handle the sensitive data that they do. I think the other thing, of course, is interoperability, which is malfunctioning in Portugal. It doesn't work very well mostly anywhere, but I think in Portugal is particularly malfunctioning. And it's a major issue. I mean, I look at countries such as France or Austria, and now Italy and Germany and Belgium, who have kind of national electronic health records where all players, and I'm seeing someone talking about Estonia, yeah, and kind of have national electronic health records where all players can write, and with the patient consent, all patients can read. So basically, the data belongs to the patient, and it's easy for the patient to share. Whereas in Portugal, the healthcare system is absolutely siloed, and all the operators kind of do their own thing, and they protect, of course. It's a way of getting patient loyalty. I understand that, but I think that is a very important point. Finally, and yeah, I think data can have a huge impact on the quality of the diagnosis and on the resolution rates of telemedicine, for instance. Right now, our resolution rate, and we gather data from the doctors and from the patients, our resolution rate is around 93%. So basically people, and this is not kind of the did you like stars, it's actually resolution. It's around 93%, and we have grown this from around 80% a few years ago. And when we had 80%, we had, I don't know, 100 consultations per month. Now we have around 20,000 to 30,000 consultations per month. So it's a very different scale and a much higher resolution rate because of the technology that we use that basically gives additional tools to doctors to improve the quality of the diagnosis. So I think data is where healthcare is going to be, is going to make healthcare evolve. I mean, Vienna, you will become a digital therapy because of the data, not because of the interface. And data is the thing, but usually I don't see, I still think it's a bit of a long way to go. European health data space is going to go live in theory in 2030, I guess, but I'm not even sure of that. And I look very much forward to that, because I think, of course, for companies that are smaller but have the infrastructure and the know-how, the European health data structure is going to be an incredible tailwind that we're going to receive, because suddenly all the data from the thousands of people that use our service is going to be made available to us, and we know how to operate it. Which is something that I see many established healthcare providers gathering data. They gather a lot of data, but I don't see, I'm not able to see the use that they actually do to deliver quality of service or depth of knowledge to the patient.
I definitely think European health data space is something that Europe is doing very well, and I really hope that we're able to implement it faster than anticipated, because I really think it will change everything. Yeah. On the other hand, it's regulation, of course, with a lot of, it's great, but it also imposes a lot of challenges. There's also the medical device regulation, that is something that is quite, still quite new. Like how you have, navigated through this world of navigation, of regulation, and how easy or how difficult has been for you, creating a startup from scratch and then being able to adapt to all of these regulation that keeps pouring, particularly in Europe. Do you want to talk a little bit about
it's horribly painful. From my side, it's horribly painful. And you get funded by investors, and investors see you throwing a lot of money at that, because it's painful, it's long, it's expensive, and it's part of the game. So you either have investors that understand what healthcare is about, or you create enemies in your investors about 2 weeks after they have invested. Yeah. I don't know, Viviane and Francisca, what your experience is.
Yeah, for us, we have seen that the regulation has been changing quite quickly nowadays. In the past year, we believed we were only a class 1 medical device because we only do screening of burnout and other mental health disorders. So we don't do a diagnosis or treatment. But right now, with all the new legislation, we are already a class 2A medical device, and of course, that, as you mentioned, Jose, that needs a lot of more investment and time. So we are still not navigating on those challenges.
You can fundraise on that argument, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We are fundraising for that because, for us, we believe that this is key to enter the market. Yeah,
definitely certification is key to enter the market, but you need to have like pivotal clinical trials, and that's very, very expensive. And so as a small startup, you end up on the pilotitis veil, let's call it like that, in which you're basically doing a pilot, another pilot, another pilot. You have like interesting data, but you need to have like money to actually advance to like the pivotal clinical trials. And then even if you get to the market as a certified medical device, if you want to go like for reimbursements, then you have a whole new discussion, fragmented Europe. So there's another layer of complexity added there. And that actually creates inequality across Europe, because you have a lot of countries that are much more advanced and that can bring this easily to their citizens, but you have others that are lagging behind, which is our case. So that's another layer of complexity after the regulatory approval that a startup needs to take in account.
Yeah, putting it together with healthcare sector being one of the most complex for sure that exists. Not an easy thing, not an easy sector that you have chosen. Of course, it's also a sector that is extremely exciting and that touches people in a very meaningful way. So looking ahead, what collaborative opportunities do you see in the future for health tech? startups to drive collective innovation in the industry. And in particular, being such a complex ecosystem, I'm a true believer that the only way forward is really collaborative innovation. So it has to be the hospitals, the startups, industry, the government, EU. So all of us really have to together advance to reach, you know, this maybe this final goal that one of the questions of one of the participants, which is also like when we will get this AI, a very advanced AI that will basically replace every human in healthcare except for the patients in diagnosing everything. But so how do you think this moving forward, and what is the value of collaboration, and how can we all of us try to enhance this collaboration in order to advance faster? And I think it might be the last question.
I can start. I see a lot of potential in pharma collaborating with startups. And we're starting to see this. Basically, big pharma as the muscle, they have the teams, they have the needs. They are very good at pharmacological interventions, but they lack the knowledge on digital, they lack the speed. I think that there is a lot of potential in having like collaborations with pharma and basically having the startup be the delivery of like the digital solutions to the pharma. Obviously, there needs to be a win-win situation, but definitely if they find a common ground and establish very well, very early on, what are the conditions of these partnerships, I think that there is room to actually evolve together and get and basically come up with better solutions, complementary solutions, let's call it like that, that actually fits both parts. I think there are a lot of potential there.
I agree with you, Viviana. The sector with whom we are working, kind of as in big sectors as we are that we're working with, that we're seeing a faster adoption and bigger collaboration is definitely pharma. Our experience with hospitals and insurers is that they are kind of more conservative and slower to adopt. Another thing that we see is that there's a lot of the culture of we will develop things ourselves because we will. And I think pharma has probably understood this a little bit better than the other types of players. It's that if you want to go faster, you go much faster if you go with someone else. And we're seeing a lot of goodwill and actual tests. I cannot discuss them, unfortunately, because we are under NDA, but we are testing a few interesting things within our own patient management tools and patient engagement and all of that. And the main sponsor of those tests and of those learnings was pharma. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and from our side, we are also working with a pharma. So I guess that confirms that pharma are on the front line of collaborative projects with startups. So yeah, I also agree. And if I can add something, is that I believe that also, like, for example, new reimbursement schemes, such as the German DIGA, are also trying to open, I believe, some fast tracks for collaboration with startups. So, for example, for us, that would be a great collaboration because of all of the challenges that we mentioned about reimbursement.
Okay.
And the cool things about the collaboration with pharma is that then those collaborations, you can definitely put them in hospitals and insurers. So it's not siloed, it's just a faster track to get things done, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we reached the end of our time. I think it's just request for all of the people that asked questions that we were unable to answer. They're all anonymous, so please send us an email with the questions, and we'll try to answer to all of the questions. But we need your emails. I'd also like to thank all of the panelists. I don't know, Francisca, if you'd like to just in 1 minute to tell us how important it was for you protecting, and then we'll close off.
Yeah, sure. I'll try my best. So yeah, for us, protecting was very important because we were in a very early stage initial phase. So it was important for us to really hear the partners, the corporates' needs. So we really tried to listen a lot, so to gain a lot from their experience and to be flexible, of course, maintaining our core technology, but being flexible to adjust and to really achieve the fit between the needs and our solution. Yeah.
It's great to hear. So thank you very much. Thank you, Francisca, Bibiana, Jose. It was a pleasure to be here. And thank you for all the participants and for the excellent questions that they asked. And hope to see you soon and maybe in the next Protechting.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.